Hi, I'm Dave Pearce, and tonight on the Dance Years, I'll be looking back at the year that was 1990. My number 10 track of the year comes out of the Madchester scene, courtesy of one of our national treasures and probably the most legendary caner of them all, Shaun Ryder. Here he is with Happy Mondays and their defining moment in dance with Step On.
They were mad, Happy Mondays. You know, Shaun Ryder was absolutely balmy, and Bez was, bless him, you know, it's just great to see, you know, it was just like, we don't give a shit.
The lyrics to Step On were mad and remain to be. I remember us walking around saying that we were going to twist each other's melons, and a lot of talk of calling the cops. And to this day, I still don't know what Shaun Ryder was on about, but I liked it, so it's cool.
Hey, good lady, got on your side, you got a double tongue, you never think you will lie. Oh, lie.
They had such incredible presence, such an incredible personality. The music matched the people so much, you knew they would be around for years, and Step On remains such a good record.
You can change your desire, don't you know it can make you forget you're the man, you're the man.
That one, just a tune that came in, and it was at the end of the kind of acid house era, and then all of a sudden all these kind of slow tunes came in. They were just really great, you know. I remember being in fields at 7 in the morning, and the sun would come up, and these kind of half-beat tunes, wicked.
You've got these sort of bunches like scallies sort of really getting down. It's got a wicked groove to it, really funky. There's this fella Bez sort of rocking around in the background who seemed really happy, and I wasn't really sure why back then, but yeah, and they just had a real energy to it, and it's a tune that's got a great groove.
Back then, Manchester was arguably the centre of the dance music universe. Always a vibrant city, the interface between rock music and club culture ensured that the northwest of England was the place to be in 1990.
And I always say that the great thing about Manchester is that every other city in the world, you're either dance or rock. In Manchester, there is no separation. Manchester was very urban, you know, very industrial. The Hacienda, you know, canals, the Moors murders, you know, Morrissey talking about shallow graves. It had this edge.
All the circumstances were right. You had a great venue. I mean, the Hacienda was just an incredible venue.
Hacienda is always going to have a little place in my heart, I think. I think that's when I'd grown up a tiny little bit when it came to clubbing.
I used to sort of finish work on a Saturday at about 7 o'clock and just go down and queue up for hours to Hacienda, and it's like everyone was wearing hideous paisley hooded tops and doing this mad dance.
And for the first time, you know, all the haircuts of the Hacienda that stood around looking cool, you know, suddenly that club exploded into a different kind of scene, you know.
White British guitar bands making dance tunes, DJs picking up on indie tunes and turning them into dance tracks, and it turned the world upside down.
I thought the Happy Mondays gigs around about, you know, 1990 and that were absolutely fantastic events.
Everyone, quite rightly, saw what the Mondays were doing, and they got with it because it was fantastic, because it was what rock and roll was about.
It was an all day, you took your thermos flask and your sandwiches, you know what I mean? It wasn't a gig, you know, it was like a 2-day camp out.
And I think I got, like a lot of people, into dance music through people like the Stone Roses and the Happy Mondays. And I remember, probably for me, a big record was the Primal Scream, Load It, was the first dance record that I went out and bought.
There's no doubt a lot of good stuff came out of it, but there's a lot of hype as well.
The place was like overrun with journalists from all over the world, you know, and they wanted to make it into a cohesive thing. But I think if you talk to the bands at that point, we had definite separate views of, you know, what the scene was.
Everything just fell into place, and it just happened to be Manchester.
1990 was a massive year for dance tunes breaking through into the top 40. But meanwhile, the underground scene was still going strong, constantly reinventing itself and creating new sounds. Here's one of the tracks that suddenly came along and helped form yet another new style. It was really a definite DJ's favourite, this one. Here's Nightmares on Wax and Aftermath.
There's something going round inside my head. I think it's something I feel. It's something unreal.
Nightmares on Wax Aftermath was another of those just so unique records. It created this sort of bleep genre, particularly out of Sheffield and Warp Records. They just were so different. They were real techno bleeps and noises, and I remember finding out a few years later that, you know, Jarvis Cocker had done the video, and it was just so eerie.
For us, it was the first video that we got to make, and Steve Beckett from Warp said to us that he played the track to this guy called Jarvis, who had this idea of like his sort of head melting with this ice. So we went down into the basements of Brixton Academy to record this video, which is the part where we're all twisting these knobs that are meant to be inside this head. And only until about 4 or 5 years ago, I realised that this person, Jarvis, was Jarvis Cocker. The sort of story of Aftermath for us was kind of a nightmare, pardon the pun, do you know what I mean? So we recorded the track, and then we lost all the sounds on disc, so we had to do the track again. And then when we went to get the track pressed, on the way to the lacquer cut, the lacquer got damaged. In between recording this track, we got arrested in the studio because they found some herbalistics on the floor and stuff like that, do you know what I mean? There's a police trespassing and stuff like that. So all these like little happenings that happened around that tune, that's why we called it an aftermath, just because, you know what I mean, all the problems we sort of went through with the track and that.
The dance vibe was spreading across the north, and soon Sheffield found itself on the map as a new centre for making music. Collectives like Nightmares on Wax and LFO were pioneers of a new sound, which of course the media were quick to pigeonhole. Imaginatively, they called it bleep.
Sheffield had this great tradition of electronic music from people like the Human League and Cabaret Voltaire, so, you know, bleepy records which came out of Sheffield and Leeds made perfect sense.
It's almost like people are scared of bass lines nowadays, do you know what I mean? Because then it was just about who could get the rawest bass line as loud as possible.
That's the first kind of records that I heard with more sub than, you know, the stuff that was coming out before it.
The reason for the dark bass lines and stuff really was because of the background of the people. So we were either from a hip-hop background, a reggae background, and it was all, in the days, it was all about who had the loudest bass.
It was about people making music because they felt it, instead of, you know, buying magazines and lifestyle.
Number 8 on my top 10 of the year is LFO, with the imaginatively titled LFO. Now seen as pioneers of British techno, the duo of Mark Bell and Jez Varley certainly divided public opinion at the time. The track stormed into the charts at number 12 and sold over 130,000 copies. But the two soon refused to appear on top of the pops, and then Radio 1 DJ Steve Wright called it the worst record in the world. I thought it was brilliant. Anyway, make up your own mind, here's LFO.
I remember going to the record shop where I eventually got a Saturday job and going to get a copy of LFO with my pocket money, going in there and stuff and listening to it, and it was like so like bassy, and it was just different. It was totally like, never heard a record like that before, kind of with that amount of bass in it and stuff on a house track. And I remember walking out of the record shop and going down the sort of halfway down the market and still hearing the bass line playing, but they'd left the record playing in the shop.
LFO had a dirty, great big bass line in it, and it was, you know, complete kick drum, you know, and it was very ravey. That track there, I mean, it gave new means to house, to the breakbeat scene, you know, to the hardcore, to everything because of the bass line.
When that bass kicked in, it was like nothing you'd heard before. People are used to those kind of mad Hoover basses, low frequencies. When that came out, with all the jingly pianos that had gone before, that was like Armageddon. That was a tune.
It was just out there somewhere, like nothing you'd ever heard before, and it was so dark compared to everything else that was around. It was a standout track.
They're spooky. They're spooky records. They were spooky when they came out, and they're still spooky and they're still relevant. They were groundbreaking records and really inspired by Detroit, you know. It's like records from Detroit and put through a mincer, and it comes out slightly different, you know.
Well, that's it for part 1, but join me after the break when I'll be telling the story of a pirate radio station that managed to take British dance music from the underground to the mainstream. Welcome back to the year that was 1990 and my countdown of the 10 most essential tunes of the year. There was plenty of dirty dancing going on to my number 7 record, Blue Pearl's Naked in the Rain. Durga McBroom's throaty vocals helped make this an essential summer track and one of the biggest hits of the year.
Blue Pearl, Naked in the Rain, that's the one with the girl dancing about, doing her little thing in the video. It was a pretty mad video with all this rain coming down on her and stuff. And it was way back 90, I think. It was a pretty cool record. With dance music becoming an increasingly mainstream experience, 1990 provided many with their first clubbing experience.
My first experience of really going out clubbing would have been the Pleasure Dome in Falmouth, because it was close to home, close to Bolton, and also it was just massive in there.
I came to a nightclub in Brighton called Sherry's, which is a big kind of midweek new romantic night. And I think the tune that was playing when I walked in was Planet Rock. It must have been the week it came out. And so I just fell in love with it.
It was a club consisting of 2 rooms full of sweaty people wearing white gloves, sucking dummies.
I think it's easier for girls to go out when they're underage than it is for blokes, because blokes show their age. They look like skinny, scrawny teenagers.
Hanging out with boys old enough to own an XR3i, and then all piling dangerously into the back of the car.
I remember putting my old John Travolta suit on, nicking my dad's suit and shirt and that.
I don't know.
Size 16 collar, and I was only 15 or 14.
So you're a couple of years older than me.
I was taken to a club called the Surrey Theatre Club, which is behind the Astoria. It's changed names now, but back then it was a very dark basement club, cool people, and for me it was amazing.
My name's Sarah Cox and I danced on a podium. I admit it.
Long before they set fire to £1 million and called it art, sprayed the audience at the Brits with blanks from a machine gun, and delivered a dead sheep to the after-party, KLF were rather famous for releasing some of the best dance tunes around. At the start of 1990, they were known only on the dance scene. By the end of the year, they were well on their way to conquering the world. Here they are at my number 6 with What Time Is Love.
Right now it's time to bring out the dance.
then I reach a positive vibe, a way of life is how I'm living. So get hyped to the rhythm. KLF is the crew you hear, yeah. Design a rhyme I just won't fear. Back to react, enough is enough. Let me ask you a question. What time is love? What time is love? What time is love? What time is love?
When I used to play KLF, I used to have no job. So many people come up and say, what is this record?
KLF was the real big one for me, you know, because they were a really important part of what it was all about, and that record was a big track for me. What Time Is Love.
Take the chance to advance, you might hallucinate, exaggerate, I devastate. We had to pass a pyramid blaster, the jams are here, it's what you've been after. I make you shake to, break you, take to, right in the path for what they call the moo-moo. KLF, boy, we come rough, bring the break. What time is love?
KLF, What Time Is Love just reminds me of purple arms, window panes, and the whole sort of acid element and the clubbing thing and that. It was that time, do you know what I mean, when there was something new happening, not just within the music and not just within the scene, but mentally as well, with all the youth that was around and going out at that time and that, you know what I mean. Our minds were being expanded, definitely.
What Time Is Love? Yeah, that takes me back to going out in Blackburn, a club called Monroe's, where most of the raves used to sort of start from. And I think I was probably the only person on the dance floor at this point at about 4 o'clock in the morning.
The final chapter, prophetic, poetic. When I'm done, this course for anesthetic. Get to step 2, let an MC come in effect with King Boy D. I wanna be, gonna be, old time sucker. You know the time, I never stutter. A beat, a dream, and yet see bright. Yeah, past the mic. What time is love? What time is love? What time is love? What time is love?
One of the most influential factors in the growing dance music scene was pirate radio. In the late 80s, stations such as LWR and KISS were instrumental in breaking new tracks, as well as being a breeding ground for many of today's top DJs.
You had to go illegal to sort of, you know, to get that music out there. To me, that was very inspirational. It was what it's what the roots of dance music culture is all about.
Pirate stations, I've got so many memories of those, and I don't care what anyone says about the stations now. Nothing will ever touch how that is. You know, nothing. It was fantastic.
I would look all over London for parties and stuff, because in that day and age there wasn't really any dance radio.
It was a sort of music which wasn't popular with what was considered to be the mainstream, and that there was a sort of cartel against people playing that kind of music.
I remember being depressed when the Pirates weren't on, just thinking, oh, I can't get my daily fix, you know.
I think the thing about KISS as a pirate station was it just had that little bit more class, if you want to use that word, than a lot of the other pirate stations. You know, we tried to have rules on KISS, which kind of contravened the general way that a lot of pirates broadcast.
I remember some of the DJs used to just like stop the music and tell a little story because they were a bit too hammered in the middle of the night.
Stations, the DJs would talk all over the records, you know, do shouts out to their mates constantly, and you can still hear that on pirate radio today.
All the pirates together had 500,000 listeners. It wasn't always on. You know, there were weekends when the transmitters were impounded. There were weekends where the weather was shit, and you know the weather affects, you know, how far you cover.
It would be like you'd be playing a record and it'd be like, oh God, shit, DTI's coming, and you'd have to get your records, climb down the side of these walls with your records, because if they'd got your records, you didn't have them back ever again. That was it, gone. They say you got them back with a year, but they teethed them.
It was a myth to say that it was there every week from 85 to 88. It was there when it wasn't being raided and they had enough money to put the transmitters up.
You got your record to the most people. It was such a great thing. I so miss the pirate.
In at number 5 on my top 10, it's the C&C Music Factory with a song that launched a million aerobics classes, Gonna Make You Sweat. The C&C name comes from the DJ duo behind the track, Robert Cavillis and David Cole. And in 1990, these guys were the people to work with everyone from Mariah Carey to Michael Jackson queuing up for a remix. The explosive popularity of dance music meant that Kiss did not remain illegal for long. In 1990, the station was granted a commercial broadcasting licence. For most dance acts, this was the first time that their music was getting daytime play on legal radio. Although a 24-hour dance music station was a real achievement, it invariably meant that things had to change.
It was a really exciting day when Kiss first came on air legally, and the first record I played was by the Jacksons, and it was called It's Great to Be Here, because that was the way I felt at the time.
Kiss employed more people than any, had more DJs, and it had backroom staff in sales or in marketing. There was something like, 37, 39 presenters.
We had these new studios, and suddenly we had a lot more equipment to deal with than ever before. And we actually had, a producer for the first time.
We had Jules, we had Danny, we had Rodigan, we had Paul Trouble, we had Colin Dale, we had Colin Favour.
Remember when they started? Remember the advertising campaign? It was just Kiss all over London, all the tubes, the lips. It was really everywhere. They all went Kiss mad, didn't it, for a while?
Kiss 100 was there Monday through Sunday, 24/7. And so it was going to be a different proposition to begin with.
The thing about Kiss as a commercial thing is that, obviously the key to that is getting the daytime music sorted out, get it in so it reaches the maximum number of people. And in doing that, inevitably, you kind of go to the lowest common denominator. And I think a lot of the specialist DJs from Kiss just thought, oh, this is horrible. Why do we have to play these records?
I'm playing Bleep, which is post-acid house, right, at 6 o'clock in the bleeding morning. Now, do you want to turn your radio up and listen on the when you wake up and I go, no, you don't.
If Kiss had one quality when it started, it was that it was a credible thing. It wasn't like something that was put together. It was something that had happened organically as a pirate station, people getting together because they wanted to play the music, And that is the foundation of what Kiss is about.
As soon as it went legal, it was like, oh, amazing, because it was the first time that it felt like there was a bit of power to the people.
We went from nothing to an audience of 1 million within the side of the first month of launch. And that was double our expectation.
Like everybody in London's heard of the Hacienda, everybody outside of London's heard of Kiss.
Just when some dance music was getting a bit dark and a little moody, along came Lady Miss Keir to brighten up our lives with lots of fake fur, bright colours, funk and fashion. What a great video this is too. D-Light, we salute you at number 4. That's it for part 2, but join me again to find out which dance floor classics make it to my top 3 tracks of the year. Welcome back to 1990 and the year that belonged to Madchester.
Tank fly, boss walk, jam, nitty gritty. You're listening to the boy from the big bad city. This is Jam Hot. This is Jam Hot.
My number 3 of the year sees the arrival of a certain Mr. Norman Cook in our charts. After losing the dodgy jumpers of the House Martins, Storming Norman rediscovered his love of dance and claimed his second number 1 with the music collective Beats International. Vocals came courtesy of Lindy Layton, and Norman's the one on the guitar, pre-Zoe, pre-Fat Boy, and still knowing a good tune when he finds one.
Well, the track really came around in quite a convoluted way. When I left the House Martins, I was doing remixes. I was still signed to a record company, and they started saying, how come all you do is remix other people's tunes? You should make your own. And I was quite reticent to do that at first, but again, just because I was white in those days, it was a brave move being a white person making black music.
boss walk jam nitty gritty. You're listening to the boy from the big bad city. This is Jam Hot. This is Jam Hot.
We had this thing called the Norman Cook International Roadshow, which was basically me DJing and like playing percussion or drums, various mates of mine who were rappers, and it would just be a kind of free-for-all. I'd play records and they'd kind of chat over them. And Lindy, he started hanging out with the Roadshow and started singing over the top of, it's a kind of reggae tradition, you know, you just sing over other people's records. And the rhythm track had been the B-side of my previous single. It was just a kind of rhythm track of the Guns N' Brixton thing. And she just one night started singing Just Be Good to Me over the top of it. And we were like, that's the single.
Next to Tom Jones, he's one of the nicest men in music business, I would say, because he's like, first of all, he's really talented since all the projects he did, like with House Martins or Beats International whatsoever, and now its own Fatboy Slim project, Top Boy.
Inevitably, alongside the Madchester music came Madchester fashions. The Mancunian look, hooded tops, large T-shirts and extra wide trousers led to the scene being dubbed baggy.
Manchester had its own really big fashion thing. They were the ones that really got into these floppy hats, massive baggy jeans.
Jackets with the sleeves about 3 times too long that were all worn out. Not a lot different than some rock bands wear these days, actually. Baggy jeans and daft hats, like muslin hats.
My first clubbing was all the dirty, messy stuff, and then I went a bit of Madchester for a bit, when it was all a bit baggy.
It wasn't just sort of baggy pants and jangling guitars, you know, it's a real odd mixture of things that made up those times.
I think that the whole kind of loose jean look, you know, you've got stories of people talking about, you know, when they were getting put in prison or when they were getting banged up in, you know, cells for a few nights by the police. They'd take out your laces and they'd take out your belt. So there was always that thing of someone having the sagging jeans. It wasn't flared at all, and if you look back on it, the whole point was there were wide-thighed jeans. And the reason was, if you're gonna dance like fuck, you're gonna sweat, you want loose clothing. And the center of the look was the shoulders, was the cut of the shoulders, and the fact that the expression, you know, physical expression was coming through the shoulders. I thought it was a great look. It was a very, very good look, and it was kind of bowdlerized by the London media as you know, flares and baggies. It wasn't flares. Flares was the late 60s. It wasn't a return to hippies.
Well, my number 2 is rather high on the fromage factor and loses a point for encouraging the likes of 2 Unlimited and Culture Beat. Anyway, they're almost forgiven because Power was such a big tune. Here's Snap.
Приступила к производству компьютеров «Персональный спутник».
Snap attack, front to back, in this thing called rap. Thinking like a double rhyme double on a heavily level. Bang the bass, turn up the treble. Radical mind day and night all the time. 714, wise, divine, maniac, radiac, winning the game. I'm the lyrical Jesse James.
You've got the power. It's a bouncy record. I think I can remember bouncing to that, yeah.
1990, music-wise, has to be Snap, The Power. I remember that song. Skidding, kind of hectic. Skidding.
It was a massive tune at the time. Really cheesy when I look back on it now, but like very fundamental into like part of my dance music history and how I learned my first cool steps in front of the mirror.
I possess, some say I'm fresh, when my voice goes through the mesh of the microphone that I am holding. Copywritten lyrics so they can't be stolen if they all snap. Don't need the police to try to save them, your voice will sing. So please, stay off my back, or I will attack, and you don't want that. I've got the power!
Back in Manchester, the scene was splitting at the seams. Gangs had muscled into the clubs, and the level of violence had led to the city being dubbed Gunchester, as rival groups fought for control of the drug trade.
Loved the Hacienda, absolutely adored it. But I do have to say, over the years, the atmosphere started to change a little bit. It wasn't the party atmosphere that you wanted, that you went for.
I used to hear stories about it being really rough and with people walking around with guns, but I didn't experience that. I mean, I went there and I thought it was a great club.
A lot of gangs seeing it as an opportunity to make money through drugs or like on the doors.
You'd queue up and the bouncers would start to size you up and you'd think, you know, I haven't done anything wrong here. I've just come to come clubbing and enjoy myself.
I remember one time there was the Salford lads down there had a go at Dave Morales. Me and Dave were playing in the basement. I think it was a 10th year birthday party.
And the guns come out, didn't they?
Yeah, there's a few guns at Dawns and a few silly things.
Manchester was descending into armed gang. You know, we became a little bit of Russia in the early 90s.
Every night that I went there, there'd be somebody would run through with a gun or something.
There was a bad period because everywhere had to close because the security on the clubs couldn't handle. You know, how do you stop someone with a gun? You know, you can't.
I think it's like anything really, do you know what I mean? Where there's a lot of people and there's a lot of sort of energy generated, there's always going to be some sort of bullshit that's going to come with that.
Cultures come and go, you can't cry about it. I mean, it was utterly wonderful and then it exploded, so what the fuck?
In 1990, the tragically unhit were buying Vanilla Ice records. But my number one for the year was such a great song that even George Michael performed it live in later years. And radio's really never stopped playing it. Now, at the beginning of this, look out for Adamski stepping out of what looks like a giant 6-foot hairdryer. Here's Killer.
Different to what was out there. I liked the tempo, the lyric was very good, and obviously Seal went on to be hugely successful. And it was great because it came from our scene. It came from a very small scene that started to develop and became a worldwide hit.
When that tune come on, everyone just stopped what they was doing to get into the tune, you know what I mean? And then when the tune finished, just carry on whatever you was doing after that, you know what I mean?
One of the interesting things about Adamski is he was like a huge kind of star on the kind of acid house scene, and then he kind of signed a record deal, and it was almost like the label started to dictate what sound he should make. And Killer, I think, was one of those kind of sort of very rare moments where, you know, the sort of pop thing and the sort of cool dance thing really kind of blended perfectly, and, you know, he had that #1.
Well, that's it for 1990, but join me next time to find out what Clubbers got up to in 91 and what my top anthems of the year were.
Racism in a much future kings can only lead to no good. Besides, all our sons and daughters already know how that feels. Yeah.